Well, Jim, I want to welcome you to the show today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So let's talk about where you are right now at South Mill Champs. Is that the official name of the company?
Southwell Champs. Yeah, back in we were at one point KO and then we switched names quite some time ago. But back in early 2018, we merged with another organization up in British Columbia, Canada. And at that point, we became Southwell Champs, and we're the third largest mushroom grower in North America.
Yeah, I know that's amazing. And for people who don't know, when you drive through Pennsylvania and the area that you're in, it is quite profound. The mushroom experience that you get, driving through that area. So I was really fascinated to talk to you today.
Yeah, and we are the capital of mushroom growth here in Kennett Square, up in British Columbia, equally so, not quite as large, but they're also growing a lot of mushrooms in that area of the world. So, yeah, just really glad to be in the industry. It's a fun industry, and there's lots of, generally with farming, people don't apply a lot of technology. But Southwell Champs says, they see the value and they see the benefit, and they've been willing to invest in it.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you come on the show is because you have a very unique background, and you told me that you were literally born in IT, and you were in a completely different industry. But maybe you can start with how you got exposed to your first technology, maybe pre-high school or high school or whenever, and then how you made it from one industry and crossed over to this one.
Yeah, so I did spend most of my career in healthcare on the payer side, not the provider, developing large systems that pay medical, dental, and behavioral health claims. So it was a very unique industry. Not a whole lot of people doing what they did. But I worked with big systems, data centers, and all the technology that goes with it. Moving into the mushroom world, I was a little worried because I wasn't operationally sound. In other words, I didn't have a lot of experience with logistics and moving product to and from your location. So that was a challenge in an area that I had to build up skills with. But being here and being able to analyze the organization and work with peers and great leadership to kind of turn the company to start producing and ultimately become the #1 mushroom grower in the next 3 to 5 years, that's where we're headed, and I think we're well on our way.
That's great. So there was a clear goal to be #1, and so you came in, and when we were talking, I think this will be helpful for people to see this because I talk to a lot of CIOs and they sort of stay in the same vertical for years. That it's some flavor of finance or some flavor of hospital or whatever, and you made the shift, and so they want to be #1, and then you came up with a plan and you broke it into chunks, and I'd love for you to be able to talk about how you really looked at this plan and then how you took it down into the dirt, so to speak, and really looked and examined and all that. If you can talk about that, would be great.
Yeah, then the dirt. We have lots of compost where we grow the mushrooms, so we're making that too. Yeah, so I think, and I was in this mold too. I think you work for a company for many years, and oftentimes complacent is probably the wrong word, but you get into kind of a natural habit of going to the same location, working with the same people, working with the same company. And it really becomes more difficult to switch than it does to maintain. So you maintain. In my particular situation, I was looking for an organization that I could come in of good size, but really sort of add value to change how they were doing things here. And like I said earlier, the leadership in the organization, everybody is so open to that change. I think they all see the value, and so it makes my job very easier, maybe I should say, and it just allows me to help the organization get to where ultimately we need to go, and to move us into the #1 position.
So you broke this into a planning steps. You mentioned 100-day, 3-year, and then the execution phase. It's funny. I was just talking to a CIO before you, and he said that he thinks his role is the Chief Execution Officer, CXO.
That's right.
Which I find it funny, playing on different words and stuff. But we have Chief Innovation Officers, Chief Information Officers, Chief Data Officers. It keeps on going on and on. But I'd love for you, how do you look at reality when it comes to, okay, we know the company wants to be #1, and then how did you look at reality in which to build that 100-day and that 3-year and that 5-year plan so that technology was supporting this trajectory that you're aiming for?
Yeah, so as a CIO and as the person responsible for the technology, I think it's really important to understand the goals and initiatives of the organization, and from there you can break it down into additional pieces. So when I first I came into South Mill, I did spend a lot of time learning the industry and learning what the company does for a living and how all the areas interoperate together. That was a critical step, and I think from there then you can build stability to keep the organization running. But thereafter, then you strive towards the goals of the company, whether it be use of current or technologies that maybe need a refresh, maybe you need something brand new that the company doesn't have today. One of the very first initiatives, 2 initiatives that I did when I came in was, one is full functionality and traceability for traceback a product. That was a very large initiative because everything needs to be wireless. So we had to enable wireless connectivity throughout all of our facilities. And in total, there's about 20 to 25 facilities.
Wow.
So it was an enormous project. The base had to be built, and then shortly thereafter, you have to engage staff to implement and utilize the technology you're bringing that will do the traceback for you. So that was one very large project. The second thing that we had talked a little bit about before was this organization has an extraordinary amount of data that's been collected for probably the last 11 years. The data is not in the greatest shape, so it took time to take that data, clean it, create it, put it into a structured environment, and now we're in the process of running analytics against it, so that we can use that data for better decision making in the future.
So a couple questions for you, if you can share. What did you use for wireless? Was it cloud-based or was it on-premise type system?
It's on-prem, and it's the vendor is Ruckus. We use Ruckus technology because they had the organization we were dealing with. They had trained and knowledgeable people in the product. That was a big part of it. But the product that Ruckus they have products available for both indoor, outdoor, and it's commercial-based product. So it can take the stress of cleanings and things like that we do generally to keep the business running. So that was really, I think, the big decision and why we went.
You need like industrial strength, almost like military grade. Well, that's great.
Part of one of the things we do in our processing is after the mushrooms are grown and they go through their 3 phases, we actually steam the farmhouses, and the farmhouses then are at about 180 degrees, and we do that for 3 days. So in that process, any wireless communications equipment that's inside the house will ultimately feel the pressures of the heat. So we had to make sure that was accounted for in what we chose as well.
No, that's great. That's great. There's different applications and different needs, but it's great to fill that. How important, just on a personal front, how important is it to wash mushrooms when before you eat them?
I don't. It's certainly not going to hurt you, or it never has. But you know, as good practice, they should be washed off to eliminate the substrate that they're grown in and they grow from.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about that the other day with vegetables, and I'm like, you know, because I know they get handled, not just mushrooms, but all sorts of vegetables get handled, and I'm like, you know, how much do I really like when I pour water on top of like a head of broccoli? Like, how much is it really removing? I mean, unless I take soap and squirt it and then wash it, like how practical is that, you know? And so I thought,
sure.
It just popped in my head, but I'm like, I actually did open a thing of mushrooms the other day, and I was like, I wonder if it says I wash or not, and it said I needed to wash it, so I did. But
yeah.
Now this comes to like the traceability part, and you know, and I know this is kind of linked to data and source and origination, this whole farm to table movement and such. And I'm sure that there's a strong desire to want to know like where the source of different product is. Did you have to build like the software for that, or is that something that's in the industry that that was already pre-built? And this leads me to, after you answer that, to the, like the data question and the structured versus unstructured.
Yeah, we decided to buy. I mean, certainly you could build it if you had the development staff to do so, but we had decided to buy and then go through configuration. So there was a hardware piece, big hardware piece, and then there's the software piece that goes with it. So that's constantly we have that particular system talking or integrated to our ERP system. So it's a product that's coming in and out of the organization. Traceback information is also provided throughout those systems. So yeah, we just decided that was the best way to go.
Was there any similarity to like your healthcare background and in these data projects? And I know we're talking about source of a plant, but there's got to be in a similar vein when you're looking at human beings in a healthcare environment, like the source of drugs or trials or whatever it is that you're like. What fundamentals stay in place no matter what industry you're in?
Yeah, so I don't, you know, for healthcare, there is a level of traceability, although it's care, right, that you're tracing, and you know, if you're looking to generate, especially with data analytics, you're looking to look at information. You'd be looking at the patient versus, you know, an inanimate object or a mushroom,
yeah.
or lettuce or whatever. So it's a bit different. The block and chain concept in actually producing product and making that available for vendors you're dealing with, which is also ultimately where I think we're gonna be headed to, and that's, you know, a lot of the organizations that have already implemented you know, things like traceability. I think that they're going to make the partners that they deal with also implement traceability. So, you know, it's an end-to-end, so that when there is some kind of outbreak and they do need to pull off the product from the grocery shelves, they know who to pull off. It's not everybody. It's not all mushroom companies. It's not all lettuce companies. It's a very specific line, and usually a problem with some company out there producing the product.
You know, that's interesting. You and I did talk about this. So this is almost like a disaster recovery insurance in some respects, because if there's a mushroom, because there was a lettuce problem in some stores, like, well, there seems to be frequently, or not frequently, but every couple of years. And you're right, they had to remove all lettuce from the market when it was really just
right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. You walk into your local food store and all the lettuce is gone. What happened? So yeah, the traceability allows us as an organization. If somebody comes to us and says, hey, we have people that, you know, that they're getting sick, or there's some report of us selling to somebody that they're getting sick, we have the ability to go all the way back to the farm to where that mushroom was grown, or, you know, set of mushroom was grown, and then be able to you know, clean that house, remove all that product, and keep it to the place where it was truly infected. Now, we've never, ever had a recall for any type of sickness. But the reality of it is the system is there, and we have that capability should we ever need it.
But it also seems like it gives you a tremendous offense. So that's kind of from the defense perspective, making sure you don't lose the whole business instead when one house is infected. But also from an offense perspective, it seems like you can isolate and do testing. I'm imagining you have different strains that you may want to test, maybe some growth patterns in one, and be able to isolate and be able to compare data. Is that something that's a part of the future? I know nothing about mushrooms. I'm just really thinking that this may be something, but what are your thoughts on that?
We have a full quality assurance staff that they're in the product and they're utilizing it along with other systems that we have to analyze not only what we're doing but the outcome and where the product is moving. So yeah, for them it's just a necessity for their job, and they're able to utilize it and function to meet the needs of the company. So yeah, it's a pretty powerful product. A lot of companies are doing it now, but it's taken a long time for even the U.S. government to get involved and to enforce it. And I think that's what we're going to see more of. So, we're on the cusp of being more advanced than a lot of organizations just by implementing a technology like this.
Yeah, I imagine so. Well, that's great. That's great. So, as far as we had talked about, you mentioned algorithms. Why would you need an when I hear the word algorithm for data, I think machine learning algorithm or some mathematic tool set that is engineered to run through the data for a specific analysis. Is that essentially what you mean by running algorithms on your data?
Yeah, so in healthcare, it might be closer to the listeners. We had developed a product that was used by providers, doctors, that allowed, so you have all this patient information, and you and I and others we go to the doctors on a regular basis. There's always an outcome to what you've done. Maybe it's just a checkup, maybe it's something more. But all that data available for that individual can tell you things. So what we did in healthcare was took individual health plans, and we took all that data, put it into a repository, and you could do things like give doctors access to say, I want to know in this particular area code or zip code of the country, how many children, boys that are age 13 to 18, ultimately based on their care, may end up with diabetes or some heart complications or things like that when they get older. Doctors loved that type of knowledge and capability. It allowed them to improve care. So the algorithms that we would run against that was it was based on questions that the doctors ultimately would answer. In the mushroom industry, it's a bit different because you're doing it to help you understand. There's a lot that goes into making mushrooms. So it takes all that information and data, whether it be hydration, whether it be temperatures and humidity, anything related to the growth cycle, and allows you to look at that data, and it takes the output, so it knows when you're doing really well, it knows when you're doing really bad, and allows you to compare and match so that you can see what you've done that really has created value in the business with growth and output. So it's kind of the same thing, but it's different because the industries are different.
I was just talking to a CIO yesterday, another one, and he said that he thinks he's passionate about taking information and turning it into cash.
Well, there you go. That's what, in the mushroom industry with substrate, there's a smell that comes with substrate. So if you drive through the Kennett Square area, oftentimes people smell that. They call that the smell of money in our industry, right? Whenever that's in the air, somebody's making money.
That's great. That's great. Well, as we wrap up, I thought this would be a great final question to talk to you about is, what do you feel like your superpower is? What is your real strong suit that you feel not only that you bring to bear, but that other that's helped you through the years, kind of like a default capability that you think is a strength for you?
Well, there are two areas that I think I really do, maybe three, I do really well at. One is hiring good people. I believe a lot of people don't empower their staff at any level, whether they're a manager or whether they're a CIO or whether they're in some other role. But they don't empower their staff. The staff, you should try to work with staff to structure how they're doing their work, but ultimately give them the power to make the decisions. And usually the decisions they make are pretty solid decisions. So I've always hired very good people that complement the things that I'm not good at. And I think that's always been very powerful. Second thing is I'm able to get to the business reasons of why something either needs to be done or something needs to change, and match that to the IT or the technology that needs to ultimately help fix it. So, and I'm able to also, in the same light, talk to the business staff so they can understand the value. The biggest challenge you wind up with in IT, at least that I've found, is getting the staff encouraged to move to the next step. That's always, you always get pushback. But if you can share with the staff that, they're going to have exactly what they have today, except it's going to be a lot better, and give them a lot more enhancements and functionality, they're willing to walk hand in hand with you.
And getting to reasons why and match the business needs to technology, and then be able to communicate that to the business to build momentum around. Okay, excellent. Well, this is great, Jim. I think this is really quite interesting and some really great takeaways and nuggets for people. And I appreciate you for coming on to the show today. I took a lot of great notes.
Happy to be here, Bill. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thanks again. We'll do this again.
All right, sounds good.